Prologue. The Disconnection. The date is May 14th, 2008. The time is exactly 2:53 a.m. In the vast, flat expanse of rural Minnesota, the darkness is not just an absence of light. It is a physical weight. There are no streetlights here, no city glow reflecting off the clouds, just the endless canopy of stars and the oppressive blackness of the cornfields. On the shoulder of a gravel road,
Chapter 1. The Boy Who Had a Plan. To understand the horror of that night, one must first understand the boy who vanished. Brandon Swanson was not a troublemaker. He was not a reckless teenager prone to running away. In the tight-knit community of Marshall, Minnesota, he was known as the good kid. At 19 years old, Brandon stood at 5'6". He wore wire-rimmed glasses that gave him a studious, intelligent look. He was quiet, unassuming, and deeply loyal to his family. While other kids his age were looking for trouble, Brandon was looking at the future. He had just finished his semester at Minnesota West Community College in Canby, where he was studying wind energy technology. Wind energy was the future of the Midwest, and Brandon wanted to be part of it. He had plans to transfer to Iowa Western Community College in the fall to continue his degree. He had a path, he had a destination. May 13, 2008 was supposed to be a celebration of that hard work. Classes were over. The pressure was off. That evening, Brandon stopped by his parents' house in Marshall. He told them he was heading to a small get-together in Canby to celebrate with classmates. "I'll be back later," he told them. Chapter 3. The Phantom Town. The call woke Brian and Annette Swanson from a dead sleep. "I'm in a ditch," Brandon told them. He sounded frustrated, a little embarrassed, but calm. "I'm not hurt. I just need a pull." Brian didn't hesitate. "Where are you?" "I'm near Lind," Brandon said. This statement, "I'm near Lind," would become the most haunting detail of the investigation. Lind is a small town southwest of Marshall. It was familiar territory. "Okay," Brian said. "Stay with the car. We're coming." Brian and Annette jumped into their pickup truck and sped toward Lind. They kept Brandon on the phone. The drive took only minutes. When they arrived at the outskirts of Lind, Brian scanned the ditches. "We're here," Brian said. "I don't see you." "I'm right here," Brandon insisted. "Flash your lights." Brian flicked his high beams on and off, cutting through the darkness. "Do you see that?" "No," Brandon said. "I'll flash mine." Brian waited. He looked across the flat horizon for the telltale glow of headlights. Total darkness. "I don't see you, Brandon," Brian said, panic starting to creep into his voice. "Are you sure you're in Lind?" "Yes, I'm sure," Brandon snapped. The frustration was boiling over. He had been driving for an hour. He knew where he was. Or so he thought. The argument escalated. Chapter 5. The Twist. At 6:30 a.m. on May 14th, the police were notified. At first, they treated it as a runaway case, a college kid who didn't want to get in trouble for drinking. But Brian Swanson knew better. He knew that scream. Police began pinging Brandon's cell phone towers. When the data came back later that afternoon, the blood drained from everyone's faces. Brandon was not in Lind. The cell tower data placed him near the town of Taunton and Porter, Minnesota. Taunton is 25 miles northwest of Lind. Brandon wasn't just lost, he was in a completely different part of the county. He had been driving northwest, away from home, for nearly an hour, thinking he was heading south. At 12:30 p.m., a search plane spotted something glistening in the tall grass off a gravel road near the Lincoln-Yellow Medicine County line. It was a silver Chevy Lumina. It was hung up in a ditch, exactly as Brandon had described.
but it was nowhere near where he thought he was. Investigators rushed to the scene. The car was unlocked. No keys, no blood, no sign of a struggle. They looked at the horizon in the direction Brandon was walking. They tried to see what he saw. What were the lights of Lind he was chasing? In the distance, miles away across the fields, stood a massive grain elevator in the town of Taunton. At night, it was lit up with bright amber security lights. To a disoriented young man in the dark, those high lights could easily look like a town on the horizon. But between Brandon's car and those lights lay a deadly trap: the Yellow Medicine River. Chapter 6. The River and the Silence. Search dogs were brought in. A bloodhound picked up Brandon's scent at the car. The dog pulled the handlers down the gravel road, heading north directly toward the grain elevator lights. The dog tracked the scent for nearly 3 miles, through fields, across abandoned driveways, and then the dog stopped. The scent trail ended abruptly at the steep, muddy bank of the Yellow Medicine River. That year the river was running high and fast. The water was freezing cold. The banks were slick with mud. The realization hit the searchers like a physical blow. Brandon's last words, "Oh shit," likely marked the exact moment he stepped into the void. He probably thought he was stepping onto solid ground, or perhaps crossing a small creek. Instead, he slid down the steep bank and plunged into the rushing, freezing water. The search that followed was massive. For weeks, hundreds of volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through the tall grass. Divers scoured the murky river bottom. Sonar was used. They found nothing. No body, no jacket, no glasses, no phone. If he fell in the river, his body should have washed up downstream. It never did. If he managed to crawl out, wet and freezing, he would have succumbed to hypothermia within minutes in the 40-degree air. He would be curled up in a field somewhere. But farmers have harvested those fields for 17 years. No bones have ever been found. Epilogue: The Open Wound. Today, the disappearance of Brandon Swanson remains one of the most baffling cases in American history. How can a man walk across open farmland while on the phone, scream, and simply cease to exist? Some theories are darker. Some locals whisper that he didn't fall in the river. They suggest he saw something, or someone, in the dark that he wasn't supposed to see. That "oh shit" wasn't a slip, it was a realization of danger. Did he stumble upon a drug deal in the remote farmhouse nearby? Did a passing stranger offer him a ride? But the evidence points to a tragedy of geography. A young man, confident he knew where he was, walking with determination toward a light that was a mirage, straight into a river he couldn't see. Every night, the wind blows across the Yellow Medicine River, and somewhere out there, in the silence of the Minnesota prairie, the answers lie hidden in the dark.